When the wedding planner said, "You're seated at table K, near the service entrance," I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I followed her through the manicured tent, past clusters of elegantly dressed guests clinking champagne flutes, past a towering floral arch where Lexi Bradford, the bride, was taking posed photos with Derek, my brother. Then through a narrow side hallway, where the scent of grilled salmon and expensive perfume gave way to detergent and stainless steel. The planner pushed open a swinging door, and there it was. A two-top table shoved in the corner of the kitchen, draped in a wrinkled tablecloth, flanked by industrial refrigerators and a tray of melting ice. I froze. "You must be mistaken," I said. "I'm Claire Mitchell, sister of the groom, CEO of Ascentech. We signed the $30 million contract with Bradford Enterprises 2 months ago." The planner glanced nervously at her iPad. "Yes, Claire Mitchell, +1. This is what's listed." Julian, my partner, stood quietly behind me. He took my hand, trying to ground me. "You want to leave?" "No," I whispered. "I want to see exactly how far they're willing to go." 10 minutes earlier, I had walked into this reception hoping, despite everything, to be acknowledged, to finally be recognized for building a tech company from scratch, for surviving late nights on a pull-out couch, coding through ramen-fueled exhaustion, and pitching investors who told me I was too young, too emotional, too female. But now, I was being served disrespect on a silver platter, next to the entree trays. Lexi appeared in the kitchen doorway like a queen surveying her servants. Her designer gown glistened under the fluorescent lights. She sipped her champagne and smirked. "Oh," she said with mock surprise. "Is there a problem?" "You could say that," I said, my voice flat. "Your staff just sat me in the kitchen." "We had to make space for some of Daddy's business partners," she said, eyes glittering. "I'm sure you understand. I'm the CEO of the company your father's business is using to power its global expansion," I replied evenly. Lexi leaned closer, her smile sharpening. "And yet, here you are. Guess titles don't always equal respect." Julian stepped forward. "This is humiliating." Lexi turned to him sweetly. "I wouldn't expect a venture capitalist to be this sensitive." I looked at Derek, who had just walked in behind her, adjusting his cufflinks. He had heard it all, and said nothing. "Derek," I said, searching his face, "did you know I was being seated here?" He looked at the floor. Lexi and I went over the chart. It was, complicated. "That's not a no." "I didn't think it mattered," he muttered. "It's just a seat." "No," I said. "It's a message." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The waitstaff stopped pretending not to hear. For a long moment, no one said anything, and then something broke inside me. Not loudly, not explosively. It was quieter than that. A final click, a lock sliding into place. A truth that had been waiting for acknowledgement since my first science fair trophy was brushed aside in favor of Derek's Little League game. "I need a moment," I said to Julian. "Wait for me outside." He nodded and left, the door swinging closed behind him. I pulled out my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I called Gregory Lynn, my COO. "Gregory, effective immediately, terminate the Bradford contract." He was silent for a second. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Prepare a release statement for Monday. We'll take the PR hit, but we're not staying where we're not respected." As I ended the call, I looked up to see Lexi's expression shift from smug to pale. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I met her eyes. "No, you will. If you've ever been pushed aside after everything you gave, just because they never saw your worth. Type 1. At 6:43 a.m., the morning after the wedding, my inbox exploded. The subject lines told me everything. Urgent, contract withdrawal. Please call ASAP, Richard Bradford. Escalation, Eleanor Wright. Implementation risk. 17 emails. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail from Richard himself, his voice gruff with restrained panic. "Claire, we need to talk. This can't be how things end." I poured coffee into my travel mug, stared at the blinking screen of my laptop and smiled, not out of satisfaction, but because I finally understood something deep in my bones. Respect can't be inherited. It has to be earned. and I'd spent a lifetime waiting for mine from people who couldn't see past bloodlines. By 8, I stepped into a Centec HQ like I was walking into my real family reunion. My assistant, Sarah, rose to meet me with wide eyes. They've been calling nonstop. Eleanor writes on the line again. Tell her I'll call back at 10, I said calmly, and schedule a leadership meeting for 9:30. They deserve to hear it from me. Upstairs, Gregory Lynn, our COO, was already waiting in my office, brows furrowed. So, he said, sipping his tea, you blew up a wedding and our largest contract in one afternoon. Care to debrief? I sat down, composed. Bradford Enterprises disrespected not just me, but this company. I won't allow our brand to be aligned with people who think seating a CEO next to the dish racks is acceptable. Gregory raised an eyebrow. You know their operations team is in free fall. Eleanor says they've already deployed our software into 9 active properties. They can roll back, I said, tapping my keyboard, or learn the cost of underestimating the woman who built what they depend on. He was quiet a moment, then he smiled. Honestly? That's the most badass thing I've seen since we started this company. Still, I felt a familiar pang in my chest when I opened the next email, from my father. The subject line was one word, disappointed. And then the doorbell rang. My phone buzzed. Julian, I picked up. Hey. They're outside, he said. Your parents, they're here. Of course they were. They didn't visit when I landed our first $1 million investor. They didn't come when Forbes profiled me. But cancel one contract at a fancy wedding? Front row seats? I stepped outside to find them standing stiffly by the security desk. Claire, my mother began, makeup perfectly in place, though her eyes were glassy. We just want to understand why I humiliated Derek, why I sabotaged a deal, I cut in, or why your daughter is finally done being quiet. My father crossed his arms. You made a scene. That was your brother's moment, Claire. Couldn't you have waited until Monday? No, I replied, because Monday was never going to change the fact that I've been invisible to this family for 38 years. Dad's jaw clenched. We supported you. No, I said firmly. You tolerated me. And when I built something real, you ignored it. Derek gets a handshake for showing up. I get seated in the kitchen after landing a $30 million contract. He stared at me, chest heaving. You've burned that bridge now. Bradford is pulling out of the partnership with Derek. Do you even care what you've done to him? There it was. The real reason for the visit. Not concern, not apology, self-preservation. I didn't sabotage Derek, I said coldly. He did that when he let Lexi humiliate me and said nothing. My mom whispered, he didn't know the full plan. Stop, I said. Lexi made it very clear I wasn't welcome, and Derek signed off on it. That wasn't an oversight. That was a choice. Silence. Then Dad said, low and slow, you better fix this. Because if you don't, you'll be the reason this family loses everything. I laughed, softly. No, Dad. I'll be the reason I don't lose myself. He opened his mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed again. I looked down. Incoming call. Thomas Harrington. Coastal Development. I smiled. If you'll excuse me, some people do want to do business with me. If you've ever been overlooked while others took credit for your work, type 2. It's time they saw who really built the table. At 9:17 a.m. sharp, our front desk notified me. Mr. Richard Bradford is here. No appointment. I stared at the message for a moment, then calmly replied, have him wait. By the time I walked into the glass conference room 15 minutes later, he was pacing, his tailored suit impeccable, but the skin around his jaw twitching. A man used to control, and visibly rattled. Miss Mitchell, he greeted me, voice tight. Thank you for agreeing to this. I didn't, I said, but I was curious what you'd say, now that your daughter's damage control failed. He sighed, trying for diplomacy. There's been enough fallout for both our sides. Eleanor tells me you're expanding in Europe. If we reopened discussions, perhaps with revised terms. Richard, I interrupted, do you think this is about money? He blinked. Isn't it always? No, I replied. It's about standards. Your daughter orchestrated a professional insult. Your son-in-law let it happen. My own brother enabled it. And you stayed silent. He sat, exhaling slowly. You've made your point, Claire, and I underestimated you. That was my mistake. I don't need your apology, I said. I need to protect the culture we've built here. I don't rebuild bridges that were set on fire by people holding matches. He leaned forward. What if I offered a full public apology? Double the contract value, full operational autonomy. I don't sell dignity by the million. There was a pause. Then, as if summoned by tension, Julian appeared at the door. Calm, collected. Richard noticed him and stood. And you are? Her partner, Julian said, in business and life. Richard gave a tight nod. Then you know walking away from this deal would be strategic, Julian cut in, which is why we're already fielding offers. Coastal, Apex, and Westfield. Richard's mask cracked. I walked to the whiteboard behind me. A graph showed projected growth after the Bradford exit, fueled entirely by new partnerships. We're not shrinking, we're scaling, without your name on our cap table. He stared at the board, then at me. You're not bluffing. I've never had to, I said, because the difference between a seat at your table and building the room is knowing which one lasts longer. He stood, adjusting his cuffs. You've made a powerful enemy today, Claire. No, I said evenly. I've made space for better allies. He walked out, saying nothing more. After the door shut, Julian turned to me. So, that felt final. It was, I said, but that wasn't the best part of my day. I pulled open my laptop and opened the Zoom call already waiting. Visible, Women Founders Weekly. 20 young female entrepreneurs filled the screen, smiling, waving. I unmuted. Good morning, everyone. Cheers greeted me. One woman said, Claire, your story at the wedding, it's gone viral. You didn't just take back your power, you reminded us we have it too. I smiled. Thank you, but here's the truth. I didn't lose anything at that wedding. I walked away with exactly what I needed. The session began. Discussion on fundraising ethics, boundaries with family and business, and how to identify gaslighting in friendly investors. Later that night, I sat on the balcony, glass of wine in hand, staring at the city I helped build my future in. Julian joined me, draping a blanket over my shoulders. Still thinking about it? He asked. Not about him, I said. About me. For the first time in my life, I don't want a seat at anyone else's table. You're furnishing your own, he said. And opening the door, I added, for women who never got invited to sit down at all. Just then, a new email buzzed in. From Derek Mitchell. Subject: Dinner this Friday, just us? I want to apologize the right way. I closed the laptop. Not today. Maybe not ever. If you've ever had to build your own room because they wouldn't give you a seat, type 3. Let's show them what real power looks like.